Drag Queen Story Hour has been spreading all across the United States into a library near you. In response to this, Kirk and Brave Books have launched the Story Hour for Brave Books in libraries across the United States, kind of building momentum. And in response to that, drag queens are now going to the Brave Books Story Hour. So lots of interesting things in the news. One of them that I've been following because of the role of media and kind of like what Brave Books is trying to do, kind of create media that is encouraging traditional values and biblically centered worldview. Kirk Cameron's book, How to Grow or something like that, I don't remember the specific title offhand, is one of the ones that they're pushing very heavily right now on social media. I see a lot of stuff about it because of the algorithm that has identified me as somebody who's interested. But an article that caught my eye this week is that in the story hours that Kirk Cameron has been putting on with Brave Books, in response to the storybook hours that libraries have been propagating with drag queens, there is now protesting against them, where the drag queens are going to the Brave Books story hours, holding up signs and basically being a nuisance in protest of these story hours. And I think that there's something to be noticed here, because I hear a lot of my conservative friends who, kind of say, the problem with the world is everybody critiquing everybody else and everybody arguing with everybody else, and everybody's always, kind of pointing out the evils, and that as Christians we're just feeding the fire, and the more that we fight them, the more that they fight back, and all of these kind of thought processes. But I look at the responses here, right? So there's Drag Queen Story Hour. We see drag queens reading stories to kids. Maybe you support that, maybe you don't. I think it's reprehensible. You have two responses. We could go and end that, put an end to it, protest the events, be a nuisance, cause problems.
There is no problem we can't create.
Or we could create something. We could create story hours for what we believe are positive things, like family and work ethic and encouraging, these different values that we think are positive. I'm not taking away from the drag queens who think that what they are doing is a positive thing. They say as much, that they're trying to save the world. However, the interesting thing to me is that the drag queen story hours have now tried to stop the Brave Book story hours. So the response to someone doing what they're doing, taking advantage of the freedom that they have, that the drag queens, is to stop that freedom, stop that expression. And so often I think that is what we have to be careful for. Whether you support, and I want to be clear, if a drag queen wants to do a storybook hour, it's protected under the Constitution. It's protected under these kind of things. There's not a you can't do this, and this is not the response that is being had by the drag queens, right? So they're now coming in and wanting to protest these events, cause problems in these events in order to cease those events. They don't want that opinion to be available for anybody. And this is one of the differences that I see from, I'm not going to say left and right, I'm going to say from freedom and authoritarianism, right? So authoritarianism can be present on both a right-leaning political side and a left-leaning political side. I actually look at this as not just like a line graph, but actually more as a circle. As the closer you get to authoritarianism, you can go there from either the left or the right. This is where authoritarianism is at the bottom of the circle. They kind of come together. And if we think about the way that society presents itself, we must be cautious when someone wants to end something else rather than present a different argument or present a different way of life or way of thought. As we end things, that must be the last resort, only for the most dangerous things, right? This is for we're not free to murder. We're not free to abuse people. We're not free to do these things. Words are not abuse. We are free to give words and opinions. If my words are we need to go and kill them all, that is a whole different statement, but it's still not actually committing the act. And we have laws to protect people for these things. And when those laws start to disintegrate, that allows authoritarian presence in our government. And that's where I see things like this as problematic. The beauty of the civil rights movement and the parts in history where we have corrected evils in our culture is that generally those come from a peaceful willingness to be oftentimes abused by oppressors, to show the evil that is going on to the rest of the culture, because the culture has to change. So I admire Kirk Cameron's way they just continue to persevere despite the eyesore and the interruptions that were being caused. There have been a lot of death threats and violence threats and things like that in these. And I'm sure on the drag queen story hours. In fact, I know 100% that drag queen story hours have received threats in that way. Nobody should be receiving threats because they're going somewhere and reading a book. Kirk Cameron seems to be unintimidated by these protests and by this pushback. So we'll see if it continues to last. I, for one, am very interested in what Brave Books is doing. I think they're doing a good thing. We've got a number of publishers that are kind of coming up like this. And, we are one of those publishers. We are looking at some children's books to be releasing this year. We have our children's show that we're going to be releasing this year that, you guys can join our newsletter to find out more about that. Just put a comment down below that you'd like to join the newsletter and we'll reach out to you. We want to be a voice in the same way that Brave Books wants to be a voice. And our voices are propelled by people like you. So if you want more people creating media that reaffirms a biblical worldview, a God-centered worldview, values of hope and faith and just the crux of Christianity in general, then like, share, subscribe, help us get this out and be impactful to the rest of the world. Hope that you enjoyed the video and always thankful when you tune in for them each week.